Recovered picked feed fragments from failed perimeter stations rarely agree in sequence, but they tend to agree in pattern. A sentry turns toward a sound that is not repeated. A heat trace bends against the shape of nearby stone. A squad disappears without sustained exchange of fire. Later examination shows no conventional infiltrator, no mechanical stealth field, and no clear route of approach. What remains is a record of targeted deaths, broken command signals, and a predator already gone before the alarm cycle completes. The organism identified in these reports is the Lictor. The Lictor is one of the most specialized vanguard organisms used by the Tyranid hive fleets. It is not deployed as a line creature, nor as a massed assault beast intended to break fortifications by weight of numbers. Its function begins before the main swarm arrives in strength. It moves ahead of the larger Tyranid organism mass, entering contested terrain, population centers, jungle zones, ruins, industrial districts, trench networks, and command approaches where ordinary reconnaissance would require expendable numbers or direct synaptic support. In practical terms, the Lictor is a living scout, assassin, tracker, and forward marker. Its presence often means that a world has already entered the early phase of predatory assessment, even if the wider invasion has not yet been recognized by local command. Its origins are tied to the broader evolutionary logic of the Tyranids. The Lictor is commonly understood as a specialized development from the Tyranid warrior bioform, retaining the underlying pattern of a tall, powerful, synaptically shaped predatory organism while being altered towards stealth, independent movement, and selective killing. This does not make it independent in the human sense. A Lictor is not a soldier with personal judgment, memory, ambition, or fear. It is an extension of the Hive Mind's requirements, shaped to operate beyond the immediate density of the swarm and still perform its assigned purpose with extreme reliability. Where lesser organisms may require close synaptic pressure to remain coordinated, the Lictor is built to range ahead, observe, hunt, and prepare a path for what follows. Its development reflects an efficient use of biological specialization. The Tyranid swarm does not need a Lictor to defeat an enemy army in open ground. Gaunts, warriors, carnifexes, and larger synaptic beasts can already provide the mass, command pressure, and killing power required for battlefield consumption. The Lictor exists because every prey world has weaknesses that must be found before the main assault reaches full intensity. Communication relays, artillery observers, field officers, logistics hubs, isolated patrol routes, civilian evacuation corridors, and hidden command posts all produce useful information. A Lictor locates these points through movement, predation, sensory sampling, and the consumption of specific victims. The most important feature of its early deployment is concealment. Lictors possess chameleonic skin capable of shifting coloration and surface response to match the surrounding environment. This is not merely camouflage in the crude sense of resembling a background color. The organism's outer tissues allow it to break up its visible outline, distort the recognition of its shape, and remain extremely difficult to detect until movement or proximity gives it away. In dense jungle, it may appear as an irregular pattern of bark, leaves, shadow, and hanging growth. In ruins, it may blend into fractured masonry, metal struts, dust, and darkness. In hive structures, it can use maintenance shafts, gantries, steam vents, light failure, and cluttered architecture to remain unseen until the exact moment of attack. The Lictor's role also depends on its ability to move with restraint. Many Tyranid organisms announce themselves through mass, speed, or biological firepower. The Lictor is different. It is adapted for stalking. It advances through broken ground, vertical surfaces, dense terrain, and enclosed spaces with a level of silence and control that makes ordinary perimeter discipline unreliable. By the time defenders identify missing personnel or unusual sensor returns, the creature may already have mapped routes through the defense line and marked areas of resistance for the approaching swarm. This is one of the reasons confirmed Lictor contact is treated as a severe warning sign. Killing the organism does not guarantee that its work has failed. The information it gathered may already have served its purpose. The feeding tendrils are central to this function. These organs allow the Lictor to extract information from slain victims by consuming brain matter and related nervous tissue. Through this process, the organism can absorb useful memory patterns, learned knowledge, and battlefield data. The victim does not need to be a major commander for this to matter. A sentry may know patrol timing. A Vox operator may know emergency channels. A junior officer may know fallback routes. A maintenance worker may know access tunnels beneath a command bastion. Each death can provide the swarm with a clearer image of the prey environment. In this way, the Lictor does not simply kill, it converts individual experience into strategic guidance. Its founding as a recurring Tyranid bioform therefore represents a practical answer to one of the swarm's central problems: how to locate valuable resistance before committing the full invasion mass. The Hive Mind does not waste effort on ritualized scouting or symbolic terror. It creates organisms that produce measurable advantages. The Lictor provides target acquisition, disruption, psychological pressure, and biological intelligence gathering. When local defenders begin reporting bodies found with opened skulls, vanished patrols, unexplained breaches, and sightings of a tall shape moving at the edge of vision, the invasion is no longer only approaching from orbit or from the horizon, it is already inside the defensive system. Over time, Imperial records have treated the Lictor as one of the most dangerous indicators of an advanced Tyranid threat, because it changes the meaning of the battlefield before the battle has properly begun. Walls become surfaces it can climb or bypass. Darkness becomes cover rather than protection. Dense terrain becomes an advantage for the attacker. Command hierarchy becomes a food source. The organism's development shows the Tyranid capacity to produce not only overwhelming biological force, but also precise predatory instruments suited to reconnaissance and assassination. Its purpose is narrow, but that narrowness is what makes it effective. The Lictor's origin, founding, and development are therefore best understood not as the story of a single species in isolation, but as the refinement of a battlefield requirement. The Tyranids required a forward organism capable of surviving beyond the main swarm, locating prey concentrations, consuming useful knowledge, and guiding later waves toward resistance. The result is a creature that rarely holds territory, rarely fights prolonged engagements, and rarely reveals itself without purpose. It arrives before the swarm is fully seen, kills before the enemy has understood the shape of the threat, and leaves behind evidence that is often interpreted too late. The Lictor's distinctive traits are all shaped around the same operational purpose: to locate, isolate, and remove valuable prey before the larger Tyranid assault arrives in full force. It is not designed as a general battlefield organism, even though it is physically capable of killing most human soldiers with little difficulty. Its body is tall, lean, and predatory, with an overall structure that reflects its descent from the broader Tyranid warrior pattern, but its proportions are more specialized for concealment and sudden violence. It does not present the same battlefield profile as a Carnifex, a hive tyrant, or a massed brood of hormagaunts. Its threat is not based on weight, numbers, or visible dominance. Its threat is based on remaining unseen, until the defender's chain of command, patrol discipline, and spatial awareness have already been compromised. The chameleonic quality of its hide is among its most important traits. The Lictor's outer tissues are capable of adapting their coloration and surface patterning to nearby terrain, allowing the organism to vanish into foliage, industrial shadow, dust-covered ruins, wet stone, hive metalwork, or the irregular darkness of broken infrastructure. This makes visual detection extremely unreliable. A trained sentry might see movement and still fail to define the shape. A picked recorder might register distortion rather than a clear silhouette. A Warspex operator might identify a biological trace only after the organism has moved from its previous position. This camouflage is not perfect invisibility, but in battlefield conditions, perfection is rarely required. Smoke, fear, poor lighting, weather, debris, and combat noise give the Lictor enough concealment to close distance before its target understands what has entered the area. Its sensory capacity is equally important. A lictor is not merely hiding and waiting for prey to stumble close. It hunts through scent, sound, vibration, heat, and biological trace. It can track individual prey through difficult terrain and identify patterns of movement across a defended zone. In forest environments, this makes it nearly impossible to evade once it has selected a target. In urban and hive conditions, it can follow routes through ducts, service levels, and vertical structures where human defenders often assume only smaller creatures or servo skulls could pass. The Lictor's ability to navigate by more than sight gives it a major advantage against defenders who rely on darkness, camouflage netting, or standard field concealment. Those protections are designed against human or mechanical observers. They are less reliable against a living predator shaped by the hive mind to interpret prey activity through multiple biological channels. The organism's feeding tendrils are one of its defining features and one of the reasons it is feared beyond its physical lethality. These tendrils are not decorative sensory organs. They are used to consume neural tissue from selected victims, allowing the lictor to extract useful information from the prey's memories and experience. A killed officer may provide knowledge of command positions, a sentry may reveal patrol timing, a Vox specialist may provide details of call signs, relays, and emergency procedures. A civilian worker may provide knowledge of tunnels, supply lifts, shelter entrances, or sealed routes through a city's lower structure. The Lictor's killings are therefore often tactical acts rather than random predation. A body discovered with signs of neural consumption is not only evidence of death, it is evidence that the swarm may now possess some portion of the victim's knowledge. Its primary natural weapons are built for close assault. The Lictor is armed with large, scything talons capable of cutting through flesh, armor, field gear, and light barriers with devastating speed. These talons allow it to strike from cover, disable multiple targets in a short exchange, and escape before a coordinated counterattack can form. Against isolated infantry, the attack may last only seconds. Against a command post or patrol group, the Lictor often appears to target the most valuable or disruptive individuals first: officers, heavy weapon operators, Vox personnel, scouts, or anyone attempting to call for reinforcement. It does not need to kill every member of a unit to fulfill its purpose. In many cases, removing the right targets is more valuable than annihilating the entire formation. In addition to its talons, the Lictor's body is equipped for movement through difficult terrain. Its limbs allow climbing, sudden acceleration, and rapid relocation after an attack. It can use elevation with particular effectiveness, striking from above or withdrawing into spaces where standard infantry cannot easily pursue. This vertical mobility is important because many defensive systems are designed around horizontal engagement. Trenches, streets, corridors, barricades, and firing lanes assume that the enemy approaches along predictable lines. A Lictor undermines those assumptions. It may descend from overhead gantries, emerge from broken ventilation structures, cross ruined upper floors, or move through dense canopy, while defenders continue watching the ground. The Lictor's gear is biological rather than manufactured. It does not carry weapons in the Imperial sense, does not maintain armor through technical ritual, and does not require ammunition supply. Its tools are grown into its body. Its camouflage, sensory organs, claws, talons, and feeding tendrils are all part of the same living system. This makes the organism efficient for deep infiltration. It does not need resupply once deployed. It does not leave the same logistical signature as a conventional scout force. It does not require fuel, Vox transmission, mechanical maintenance, or visible staging areas. As long as it can remain concealed and obtain prey, it can continue functioning as a forward asset for the swarm. Its tactical doctrine is based on disruption before open war. The Lictor is usually associated with the early and middle phases of Tyranid invasion, when the swarm needs information and the defender still believes that organized resistance can be maintained. During this period, the Lictor stalks ahead of larger organisms and helps identify the weak points of the prey world. It may attack patrols to test response time. It may consume specialists to obtain knowledge. It may draw units into unfavourable terrain. It may cause local commanders to overcommit troops to rear security, reducing strength at the primary front. Even when it is not directly killing, the possibility of its presence changes defender behaviour. Units move more slowly, patrols require heavier escort, officers become harder to reach, communication discipline becomes strained. Resources are pulled away from the main battle to defend corridors, supply depots, and command interiors. The Lictor does not fight according to pride, morale, or personal survival instinct. It operates as a biological extension of the Hive Mind's strategic hunger. If remaining hidden is more useful than attacking, it remains hidden. If killing one officer is more useful than killing 10 guardsmen, it selects the officer. If revealing itself will draw a defensive force away from a more important position, it may act as bait. This makes its doctrine difficult for human commanders to predict, because the Lictor is not motivated by the emotional logic of ordinary predators. It is a reconnaissance and assassination organism whose actions are measured by the advantage they provide to the swarm. When the Lictor succeeds, its victories may not be immediately visible on the main battlefield. A gate may open late because the officer responsible for sealing it is dead. An artillery position may fall silent because its coordinates were identified through consumed memory. A defense line may collapse because a hidden route was discovered before the attack began. In this way, the Lictor's weapons are not limited to talons and tendrils. Its greatest weapon is the information it takes from the prey and returns to the Tyranid advance. The Lictor's personality must be understood with care because it does not possess personality in the human, Eldari, orc, or even ordinary animal sense. It does not express loyalty, ambition, pride, cruelty, curiosity, or hatred as independent emotional traits. It does not stalk prey because it enjoys fear. It does not select officers because it has learned resentment toward command structures. The appearance of intent comes from biological precision. The Lictor behaves as if it is patient, intelligent, and malicious because the Hive Mind has shaped it to perform functions that human observers usually associate with patience, intelligence, and malice. Its behavioural profile is still distinct from that of many other Tyranid organisms. Lesser gaunt organisms can appear frenzied when outside clear synaptic direction. Larger assault beasts can appear blunt in purpose, driven toward direct destruction once released. The Lictor is different because its function requires restraint. It must remain hidden when prey is visible. It must observe movement before striking. It must choose a valuable victim rather than simply kill the closest one. It must withdraw when continued combat would reduce the value of its mission. These actions create the impression of a personal hunting mind, but the more accurate interpretation is that the organism has been grown with advanced predatory instincts suited for independent vanguard operations. This distinction matters. A Lictor operating beyond the immediate density of the Tyranid swarm is not free from the Hive Mind in any true strategic sense. It remains a Tyranid organism shaped by the same collective will that directs the Hive fleets. What changes is the range at which it can remain functional. Many Tyranid creatures become less coordinated when separated from synaptic control. The Lictor, by contrast, is adapted for separation. It can operate forward of the main swarm, away from the visual presence of larger synapse creatures, and still continue fulfilling its assigned role. This gives it an unusual place within Tyranid organization. It is both part of the swarm and temporarily distant from the swarm's visible body. Imperial observers often describe Lictors as cunning, and the description is understandable. They avoid obvious killing grounds. They make use of terrain. They attack command points, isolated patrols, communications personnel, and individuals whose knowledge can improve the swarm's later advance. They choose concealment over immediate violence when concealment provides more benefit. They also appear capable of learning from the deaths of their own kind, because Lictors are associated with a form of inherited biological memory carried through the species pattern. Every Lictor is not a veteran in the human sense, but the organism's design can incorporate predatory experience across previous iterations. This makes repeated encounters especially dangerous. A defense that exposes and kills one Lictor may still teach the swarm how that defense functions. Its so-called personality is therefore best described as a convergence of programmed instinct, species memory, synaptic design, and mission-specific intelligence. It does not improvise like a human scout officer, but it can adapt like a perfect ambush predator. It does not reason through doctrine as a commander would, but its behavior can produce the same result as careful reconnaissance. It does not fear death, but it avoids waste. It does not value survival for itself, but it preserves itself when continued operation will provide more value to the Hive Mind. These differences are difficult for Imperial personnel to internalize, because most military analysis assumes that an enemy has morale, self-preservation, and command incentives. A Lictor has none of these in a familiar form. Within the wider Tyranid organism hierarchy, the Lictor occupies the role of a vanguard bioform. It is not a commander, not a synaptic ruler, and not a line organism. It does not hold battlefield authority over broods in the way a hive tyrant or Tyranid warrior brood may exert synaptic pressure. Its value lies in preparation. It arrives before mass landings, before the full saturation of the biosphere, and before defenders understand the direction of the principal assault. It identifies routes, prey concentrations, command weaknesses, and vulnerable infrastructure. It may also spread confusion by forcing defenders to suspect infiltration in locations that had previously seemed secure. This organizational alignment places the Lictor beside other Tyranid vanguard threats, but its method is more directly predatory than the infection-based work of gene-stealer organisms. Gene-stealers may infest a society across generations, building cult structures beneath the awareness of planetary authority. The Lictor does not require a cult, a host population, or prolonged social concealment. It enters the physical battle space as a direct organism of reconnaissance and assassination. It is a field instrument rather than a hidden social infection. Both serve the eventual arrival of the swarm, but they operate on different timescales. The gene stealer can prepare a world across years or centuries. The Lictor prepares a battlefield across hours, days, or the unstable period immediately preceding open invasion. The Lictor's alignment with the Hive Mind also explains why it can be so difficult to counter through conventional command measures. Killing local leadership may seem like a simple terror tactic when viewed from the defender's side. In reality, it weakens coordination and supplies the swarm with information at the same time. Destroying Vox personnel does not merely silence a squad. It can expose the structure of communications. Killing scouts does not merely reduce patrol coverage. It can reveal what the patrols have seen and where they were ordered to go. The organism's place in Tyranid strategy is built around this dual effect. It removes useful prey from the enemy and turns the prey's knowledge into advantage. Its lack of social personality does not mean its presence lacks psychological impact. Human survivors often interpret Lictor attacks through fear because the pattern of violence feels selective. Bodies are not always scattered randomly. Entire groups may be bypassed while one individual is taken. Defenders may hear movement inside a fortified area without ever seeing the organism clearly. Commanders may discover that someone with access to sensitive information has been killed and partially consumed. These events create paranoia, and paranoia slows response. Units start guarding their own rear areas instead of reinforcing the front. Officers hesitate to move without escorts. Patrol schedules change repeatedly, which can create further gaps. The Lictor's behavior produces these effects without needing to understand them emotionally. By the end of a confirmed Lictor engagement, the most important question is often not how many defenders were killed, but what the organism learned before it was stopped. A dead Lictor can still represent a strategic failure if it reached the right victim, crossed the right perimeter, or identified the right weakness. This is the core reason the organism is more dangerous than its physical size alone suggests. It is lethal in close combat, but its true purpose is informational. It is a living bridge between prey observation and swarm exploitation. In conclusion, the Lictor represents one of the clearest examples of Tyranid specialization. Its origins show adaptation from an existing warrior pattern into a dedicated vanguard organism. Its distinctive traits show the deliberate refinement of stealth, sensory capacity, vertical movement, close assault, and neural consumption. Its behavioural profile shows a creature that appears intelligent because it has been made to perform tasks that require precision, restraint, and target selection. It has no personal identity separate from the swarm, yet it can operate at a distance from the swarm's main body. It has no ambition, yet its actions can dismantle command structures. It has no hatred, yet its attacks often appear cruel because they are so selective. The Lictor is therefore not simply a Tyranid assassin. It is a reconnaissance weapon, a biological intelligence gatherer, and a forward expression of the Hive Mind's capacity to study prey before consuming it. Its presence means that a defense line has already been entered, a command system has already been tested, and the swarm has begun learning the shape of the world it intends to devour. From the perspective of Imperial record-keeping, the Lictor occupies a difficult category. It is too rare to be treated as a common frontline organism, but too consistent in its effects to be dismissed as battlefield rumour. Adeptus Administratum summaries tend to describe it through the consequences of its presence, rather than through direct observation. Missing patrols, broken command links, compromised fallback routes, and the sudden deaths of officers are easier to record than the organism itself. The Lictor often leaves behind evidence that appears fragmented unless reviewed as part of a broader Tyranid invasion pattern. A local clerk may initially classify the first incidents as disappearances, sabotage, cult activity, or ordinary panic. Only later, when the main swarm begins exploiting the same routes and weaknesses, does the pattern become clear. Administratum impressions of the Lictor are shaped by loss of control. The administratum depends on sensor stability, predictable movement of supplies, verifiable reports, command hierarchy, and the maintenance of written or transmitted order. The Lictor attacks the practical foundation of those systems. It does not need to destroy a depot if it can identify the routes that feed it. It does not need to massacre an entire staff if it can remove the one officer who knows the true disposition of reserves. It does not need to overrun a city district if it can locate service tunnels, gate controls, evacuation shafts, or command shelters. To administratum analysts, this makes the Lictor a strategic contamination of information networks. Its killings matter, but the knowledge taken from those killings may matter more. Early reports associated with Lictor activity often show a delay between the first confirmed deaths and the recognition of Tyranid involvement. This delay is understandable. The creature does not always leave a clean battlefield signature. It may strike during storms, night cycles, industrial outages, artillery bombardments, or mass evacuation. In such conditions, isolated disappearances can be misread as desertion, structural collapse, enemy raiding, or civilian disorder. The administratum's weakness in these situations is not lack of diligence, but the scale of the Imperium itself. Vast defense zones produce vast quantities of contradictory reports. A single missing patrol may not receive immediate priority when orbital defense, refugee movement, munition allocation, and astropathic communication are already failing. The Lictor thrives inside that administrative delay. Adeptus Mechanicus observations are more technical and less concerned with morale, but they arrive at a similar conclusion. The Lictor is not merely a stealth organism, it is an integrated reconnaissance platform grown from living tissue. Its camouflage, sensory organs, climbing ability, feeding tendrils, and close assault weapons are not separate pieces of equipment attached to a soldier. They are fused into one biological system. From a Mechanicus perspective, this produces an uncomfortable efficiency. A conventional infiltrator requires armor, training, Auspex discipline, weapons, maintenance, ration supply, and extraction planning. A Lictor requires none of these in a manufactured sense. It is the tool, the operator, and the weapon in one body. Mechanicus biologists, observers have long treated the Lictor as evidence that Tyranid adaptation can produce battlefield roles equivalent to advanced military specializations without machine dependency. Its chameleonic hide functions as concealment technology. Its feeding tendrils function as biological data extraction. Its instincts function as reconnaissance doctrine. Its talons function as assassination equipment. Its capacity to move through broken terrain gives it the practical effect of climbing gear, breaching skill, and close-quarters mobility. None of this makes it superior to Imperial technology in every context, but it does make it exceptionally efficient for the role it fills. A Lictor does not need to outperform an Imperial regiment. It only needs to find what the regiment cannot afford to lose. Strategic findings from both Administratum and Mechanicus perspectives point toward the same operational conclusion. The confirmed presence of a Lictor should be treated as evidence that the Tyranid swarm has entered an information-gathering phase. This does not always mean immediate planetary collapse, but it does mean that defensive assumptions are already being tested. Command posts, sensor stations, orbital coordination hubs, artillery sites, ammunition routes, evacuation corridors, and astropathic relays become priority vulnerabilities. A world that reacts to the Lictor only as a monster in the perimeter has already misunderstood the threat. The correct interpretation is that the organism is part of a larger strategic process. Some Administratum reviews suggest that worlds suffering repeated Lictor incidents often show increased defensive disorder before the major Tyranid assault reaches its peak. Patrol routes become irregular, which may appear prudent but can also create gaps in coverage. Officers increase escort requirements, reducing available manpower. Rear areas consume more troops for internal security. Communications become more restricted, slowing coordination. Civilian authorities may suppress early reports to prevent panic, which prevents other districts from recognizing similar signs. None of these failures must be directly caused by the Lictor alone. The organism's role is to apply pressure at points where fear, bureaucracy, and battlefield confusion already exist. Mechanicus findings are more focused on countermeasure limitations. Auspex systems may detect motion, heat, or biological mass under ideal conditions, but the Lictor rarely operates under ideal conditions. Its camouflage is supported by terrain choice and timing. Its movement is supported by vertical access and irregular approach routes. Its attacks are often brief enough that automated defenses may register the disturbance only after the primary target is dead. Servo-skull patrols, motion grids, lumen sweeps, and chemical trace systems can improve detection, but none are absolute. Some Mechanicus analysts believe layered detection fields increase survival chances only when paired with strict command dispersal and controlled information access. This remains partly interpretive, but it fits the creature's known method of targeting knowledge-bearing prey. The most severe strategic finding concerns information discipline. The Lictor turns memory into vulnerability. A fortress commander, supply officer, scout, or local guide may carry enough knowledge to compromise more than their own position. This changes how personnel should be valued during a Tyranid incursion. The danger is not limited to rank. A low-status worker with access to maintenance passages may be more valuable to a Lictor than a noble officer with ceremonial authority, but limited operational knowledge. This is deeply uncomfortable for Administratum command systems, because it disrupts traditional assumptions about importance. In a Lictor threat environment, value is determined by what a person knows, not by where they stand in the hierarchy. For the Adeptus Administratum, the Lictor is therefore a warning against slow recognition. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, it is evidence of biological design achieving a high degree of functional specialization. For both, it is a signal organism. Its appearance indicates that the Tyranid advance is not blind, not random, and not dependent only on brute mass. The swarm is observing, it is selecting, it is learning through predation. The Lictor's strategic significance lies in the fact that by the time it is confirmed, the battlefield may already have been partially read by the Hive Mind. From the combined perspective of the Adeptus Administratum and the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Lictor cannot be assessed as a faction in the political or military sense. It has no independent state, no manufacturing base, no territory, no officer class, no supply department, and no self-directed economy. Its faction is the Tyranid hive fleet that produces and deploys it. Because of this, any study of Lictor resources must treat the organism as a specialized expenditure of the greater swarm rather than as an isolated military actor. The Lictor's resources are biological, strategic, and informational. It is grown from biomass, shaped by the Hive Mind, deployed through the wider invasion process, and sustained by the same predatory economy that governs all Tyranid organisms. Administratum records tend to define resources through tonnage, personnel strength, ammunition reserves, transport capacity, fuel availability, and replacement schedules. The Lictor disrupts this method of evaluation because it does not use resources in a human military pattern. It does not require last cell shipments, ration distribution, vehicle maintenance, or command wages. It is not recruited, trained, armed, and billeted. It is created. Once created, it carries its weapons, armor, reconnaissance equipment, sensory array, climbing gear, and data extraction tools as parts of its own body. This makes it highly economical from the swarm's perspective. The biomass required to create one Lictor may be significant when compared to smaller organisms, but its potential return can be far greater than its mass suggests if it exposes command structures or guides later waves toward vulnerable prey concentrations. The Adeptus Mechanicus would likely classify this as a high-efficiency biological platform. Its chameleonic skin functions as concealment equipment. Its feeder tendrils function as intelligence extraction organs. Its talons function as close assault weaponry. Its sensory adaptations function as tracking and reconnaissance systems. Its limbs and claws provide climbing and terrain access capabilities that would require specialized gear among human scouts. A single organism therefore contains several battlefield systems integrated into one living structure. For the Mechanicus, this is one of the most concerning aspects of the Tyranid method. The Imperium builds complexity through machine, doctrine, and trained personnel. The Tyranids grow complexity into the organism itself. The resource strength of the Lictor is therefore not measured in numbers alone. A world may face only one or a small number of these organisms and still suffer disproportionate damage to its defensive readiness. A conventional enemy scout must communicate findings through signals, couriers, Vox channels, or extracted reports. The Lictor instead operates within the wider biological logic of the swarm, marking prey and guiding the advance through organic cues and the absorption of knowledge. Confirmed records associate the Lictor with the ability to lead the swarm toward fresh targets by leaving pheromonal traces, while its feeder tendrils allow it to consume useful memories and knowledge from victims. These traits make its informational value far greater than its apparent battlefield footprint. Its greatest strength is selective effect. A Lictor does not need to defeat a regiment to weaken one. It can remove the officer who understands the artillery schedule, the scout who knows hidden approaches, the engineer who knows the gate mechanism, or the Vox specialist who can coordinate withdrawal. It can force the enemy to defend every shadowed approach, every maintenance space, and every rear corridor. In strategic terms, this means the Lictor converts uncertainty into enemy resource drain. One organism can make defenders reassign platoons, slow patrol movement, increase escort requirements, and restrict officer mobility. The Administratum would recognize this as a severe inefficiency imposed on the defending side. The swarm spends one specialized predator. The Imperium may spend hundreds of personnel hours trying to contain the possibility of that predator. Its second major strength is independence within limits. The Lictor can function ahead of the main Tyranid body and beyond the immediate visible presence of synapse creatures. This does not mean it is spiritually or strategically independent of the Hive Mind. It remains a Tyranid organism. However, its battlefield role requires enough autonomy to stalk, wait, assess, and strike without constant visible direction. This makes it difficult to neutralize by simply disrupting obvious command nodes. Destroying nearby gaunts or cutting off local swarm elements does not guarantee that a Lictor has been rendered harmless. It may already be inside the defensive zone, continuing its assigned function according to its own biological programming and the wider imprint of the Hive Mind. Its third strength is terrain exploitation. Many Imperial strongpoints are designed to resist frontal attack, armoured thrusts, mass infantry assault, or aerial bombardment. They are less efficient against an organism that enters through broken roofs, waste channels, service tunnels, overgrown walls, collapsed hab blocks, ventilation cuts, or gantry systems. A fortress may have thick gates and still contain dozens of access routes that were never intended to resist a silent climbing predator. This does not make the Lictor unstoppable, but it forces commanders to treat their own infrastructure as hostile terrain. Every route becomes a possible entry point. Every blind angle becomes a risk. The Lictor's weaknesses are real, but they are often misunderstood. It is not built for sustained open warfare against prepared lines with layered auspex coverage, overlapping fire arcs, sealed access zones, disciplined sentry rotation, and rapid response units. Its margin of safety decreases. It can be killed by concentrated fire. It can be exposed by environmental disruption, chemical detection, motion systems, disciplined illumination, and controlled terrain clearance. Its camouflage is powerful, but it is not absolute invisibility. Its body is dangerous, but it is not a fortress organism. If forced into prolonged combat against heavy infantry, armoured walkers, flamers, massed automatic weapons, or prepared kill zones, the Lictor loses much of the advantage that defines it. Its dependence on stealth is both its strength and its limitation. The organism is most effective when the defender does not yet understand the pattern of attack. Once a Lictor threat is confirmed, disciplined forces can reduce its options by limiting isolated movement, compartmentalizing sensitive information, sealing maintenance spaces, using overlapping patrols, and keeping command staff away from predictable locations. These methods are costly and difficult to maintain, especially during a full Tyranid invasion, but they can blunt the organism's effectiveness. The Lictor thrives on gaps. It is less effective when every gap is treated as a combat zone. From a Mechanicus perspective, another weakness lies in biological specialization itself. A Lictor is excellent at infiltration, assassination, and reconnaissance, but it is not optimized for every battlefield task. It cannot replace mass infantry. It cannot absorb punishment like a Carnifex. It cannot dominate the synaptic structure like a hive tyrant. It cannot perform the infection and social subversion role of a gene-stealer cult. It cannot consume a world by itself. Its power is tied to timing and context. Used too early without follow-up, its findings may lose value. Used too late, the opportunity for deep infiltration may already be reduced by active battle conditions. Its efficiency depends on the swarm's ability to exploit what it discovers. The military power of the Lictor is therefore indirect but severe. Its immediate combat power is high at close range against isolated infantry and exposed specialists. Its strategic power is higher when measured by the consequences of its actions. A killed commander can delay an evacuation. A consumed scout can reveal a hidden road. A compromised engineer can expose a defense mechanism. A terrified garrison can misallocate troops before the main swarm arrives. The Lictor does not win wars through occupation. It helps the Hive fleet make war more efficiently. In administratum terms, the Lictor should be treated as a force multiplier for the Tyranid invasion. It increases the value of later attacks by improving target selection. It reduces the reliability of Imperial command by killing or consuming those who carry operational knowledge. It increases the administrative burden on defenders by forcing them to secure areas that would otherwise be considered secondary. In Mechanicus terms, it is a self-contained organic reconnaissance and assassination system whose battlefield value exceeds its visible mass. Its weakness is that it remains a specialist. Its strength is that the Hive Mind rarely deploys specialists without purpose. The conclusion reached by careful Imperial analysis is blunt. The Lictor is not powerful because it can kill. Many Tyranid organisms can kill. The Lictor is powerful because it allows the swarm to learn. Its faction resources are the resources of the Hive fleet, but its personal economy is one of precision. Its strengths are stealth, target selection, sensory reach, terrain exploitation, and memory extraction. Its weaknesses are exposure, sustained combat, and dependence on tactical context. Its military power is not the power of a war engine standing at the front line. It is the power of a hidden organism that turns a defender's knowledge, architecture, and command habits into weaknesses before the main invasion arrives. From an administratum perspective, documented wars involving the Lictor are rarely recorded as clean engagements between two defined forces. A regiment does not usually meet a Lictor in ordered formation, exchange fire across prepared ground, and report the matter in the manner of a conventional battle. The organism is more often identified through the damage it causes around a larger Tyranid campaign. Its presence appears in casualty margins, command disruptions, lost patrol logs, breached perimeter records, and the unexplained failure of defensive positions before the main swarm arrives. This makes the Lictor difficult to place inside formal war accounting. It is not always listed as the decisive enemy, but it is often part of the sequence that allows a decisive Tyranid assault to unfold with greater efficiency. The First Tyrannic War provides one of the clearest contexts for understanding this problem. During the Tyranid invasion of Macragge, Hive Fleet Behemoth brought the Imperium into direct confrontation with the scale of the Tyranid threat. The wider campaign is remembered for the defense of the Ultramarines' homeworld, the pressure placed upon its polar fortresses, and the extreme cost of resisting a Hive Fleet invasion. Within that larger war, Lictors were associated with ambush and infiltration, particularly in tunnel and fortress environments, where their camouflage, climbing ability, and close assault biology made them dangerous beyond their physical numbers. Administratum analysis of such incidents would not treat them as isolated animal attacks. They would be classified as evidence that the Tyranids were not only attacking from outside the fortress line, but also testing its interior spaces and weak structural approaches. The result from the administratum viewpoint is a recurring pattern of defensive distortion. Once Lictor activity is confirmed, commanders are forced to spend manpower guarding areas that previously seemed secondary. Tunnel networks, ventilation structures, ammunition corridors, hab access points, service shafts, maintenance galleries, and command approaches must be treated as possible breach routes. This creates an immediate strain on manpower. Troops that could reinforce the principal line are moved inward. Officers require escorts. Patrols must be doubled or tripled. Reports must be verified before action can be taken, but delay increases risk. The Lictor therefore produces measurable administrative damage even when it kills only a limited number of personnel. The organism turns architecture into uncertainty. Mechanicus reviews of Macragge-type engagements would likely focus on the biological suitability of the Lictor to closed and broken terrain. Fortresses are usually engineered to resist mass assault, orbital strike, armoured penetration, and sustained siege pressure. They're not always designed to resist a single adaptive organism using shadow, height, and structural irregularity as weapons. The Mechanicus would note that a Lictor in tunnels does not behave like a simple predator trapped inside a confined space. It uses confinement to reduce lines of sight, shorten engagement distance, and strike before heavy weapons can be brought to bear. Its talons become more effective where defenders cannot form wide firing arcs. Its chameleonic hide becomes more effective where light is inconsistent. Its ability to climb and cling to surfaces becomes more effective where defenders instinctively watch doors, floors, and visible intersections. Other recorded and inferred Tyranid wars show the same broad lesson. In campaigns involving Hive Fleet Kraken, Hive Fleet Leviathan, and later Splinter Fleets, the Lictor appears as part of the swarm's vanguard logic. Administratum offices may record the first signs as missing survey teams, relay silence, unexplained officer deaths, or the collapse of local militia confidence. Mechanicus observers may record the same events as failures of perimeter certainty, sensor coverage, and information compartmentalization. In both cases, the conclusion remains consistent. The Lictor is most dangerous before the defenders fully accept that it is present. The first phase of its success is disbelief. A more specialized example is the organism known to Imperial records as Deathleaper, associated with Hive Fleet Leviathan and the terror campaign surrounding St. Caspalen. Deathleaper is not a standard Lictor in the ordinary sense, and later interpretation treats it as an extreme or distinct expression of the same predatory genus. Its relevance to administratum and Mechanicus analysis lies in what it reveals about Tyranid escalation. Where ordinary lictors already show stealth, target selection, and predatory intelligence, Deathleaper demonstrated how the same biological pattern could be refined towards psychological warfare. Its campaign against the planetary governor was not merely assassination. It was sustained pressure designed to destabilize command, erode confidence, and undermine the defender's ability to impose order. This case is often treated as exceptional, but it also confirms the larger principle that Lictor-type organisms can be used not only to gather information, but to weaponize fear around specific individuals. The Administratum's conclusion from such cases is practical and severe. The Lictor forces a revision of casualty interpretation. A dead officer is not only a loss of command, a consumed officer may be a breach of operational knowledge. A missing patrol is not only a manpower reduction, it may be the loss of route information, enemy sightings, local access knowledge, and morale stability. A breached fortress corridor is not only a security failure, it may indicate that the swarm has identified a pathway for larger organisms or later assault waves. In this sense, the Lictor changes the meaning of small incidents during Tyranid wars. Minor losses become potential strategic leaks. Mechanicus conclusions are equally direct. The Lictor confirms the Tyranid capacity to produce specialized organisms whose value cannot be measured by battlefield mass alone. Its success depends on integration of multiple biological systems into one platform. Camouflage, sensory reach, climbing adaptation, close assault lethality, neural consumption, and instinctive reconnaissance behavior. A machine equivalent would require several devices, trained operators, maintenance cycles, power sources, and communication systems. The Lictor grows these functions as body parts. This does not make it invulnerable, but it makes it highly efficient for infiltration war. The results of documented Lictor involvement are therefore consistent across multiple Tyranid campaigns. Where defenders remain organized, disciplined, and prepared for layered internal security, Lictors can be contained or destroyed. Where defenders are overextended, poorly informed, dependent on predictable routes, or slow to recognize the pattern, Lictors can accelerate collapse. They do not need to win the battle alone, they only need to prepare the battlefield for the swarm. The final Administratum and Mechanicus conclusion is that the Lictor should be treated as an early warning organism of the highest concern. Its confirmed presence means the invasion has moved beyond simple approach and into active assessment. It means the prey world is being studied through death, movement, and consumed memory. It means the Hive Mind has begun converting local knowledge into strategic advantage. The Lictor is not the largest Tyranid bioform, nor the most durable, nor the most visibly destructive. Its importance lies in timing. It appears before the full horror of the swarm becomes visible, and by then, part of the war may already have been decided. Inquisition impressions of the Lictor are shaped less by its physical lethality, and more by what its presence implies about contamination, information loss, and the unseen progress of a Tyranid invasion. To the Adeptus Administratum, the organism is a strategic disruption. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, it is a biological reconnaissance platform. To the Inquisition, it is a warning that the enemy has entered the hidden layer of the war. The Lictor does not merely cross a perimeter, it crosses the assumed boundary between external invasion and internal compromise. Once it has entered command space, civilian shelter space, or restricted infrastructure, the question is no longer whether the world is under attack. The question becomes how much of the world has already been read by the Hive Mind. Inquisitorial observations tend to begin with irregularity. A Lictor incident may appear first as a missing patrol, a dead officer, a distorted pict feed, or a civilian report dismissed by local authorities. These fragments rarely carry enough weight on their own to justify immediate large-scale intervention. That is part of the danger. The organism operates in the gap between rumour and confirmation. By the time enough evidence has been gathered to establish a pattern, the Lictor may have already consumed useful memories, located defensive weak points, and identified which individuals carry knowledge worth extracting. For an Inquisitor assessing a Tyranid threat world, the delay between first contact and official recognition is itself treated as a vulnerability. The Inquisition is especially concerned with the feeding tendrils because they turn individual knowledge into a strategic liability. Under ordinary imperial security doctrine, sensitive information is controlled through rank clearance, compartmentalization, and punishment for unauthorized disclosure. The Lictor bypasses those systems. It does not interrogate through speech. It does not require cooperation. It does not need documents, passwords, or access seals if it can reach a person whose memory contains the needed information. A dead gate engineer, a consumed Vox officer, a captured scout, or a killed noble administrator may each become an unwilling breach of security. The implication is severe. On a world where lictors are active, knowledge itself becomes dangerous to carry. This is where Inquisition observations begin to diverge from standard military reports. A conventional commander asks how to kill the organism. An inquisitor asks what the organism may have learned before it died. This question can produce conclusions that appear excessive to local authorities. Quarantine of surviving witnesses, execution of compromised personnel, destruction of maps, sealing of access routes, suspension of normal command movement, and restriction of refugee flow may all be considered. These actions are not always taken because they are efficient. They are taken because the Inquisition assumes that once a lictor has fed, the swarm may have gained access to knowledge no human report can fully reconstruct. Inquisitorial conspiracy findings surrounding the lictor often develop from this same fear. Some remain unsupported and must be treated as speculation rather than confirmed doctrine. It is believed by some Ordo Xenos analysts that repeated lictor activity may indicate more than simple reconnaissance. In certain suppressed interpretations, the lictor is seen as a biological audit instrument, testing not only physical defenses but also the social nervous system of a prey world. Its attacks can reveal how quickly command responds, which officials are protected, which routes are prioritized, which shelters contain valuable personnel, and which populations are considered expendable. This remains an inferred reading of behavior, not a proven statement of Tyranid intention, but it matches the observable effect of many lictor incidents. Some speculate that the organism may also be used to identify suitable psychological pressure points before a wider Tyranid assault. The extreme case of Death Leaper supports the possibility that lictor-type organisms can be refined toward terror operations, but ordinary lictors should not automatically be assumed to possess the same level of specialized psychological function. Still, the Inquisition rarely dismisses the comparison entirely. A standard lictor may not be designed to torment a planetary ruler over time, but its selective killings can still create similar results at smaller scale. Officers become guarded and isolated. Advisors contradict one another. Local militias lose confidence in sealed walls and controlled zones. Civilians begin to believe that the enemy is already everywhere. The Hive Mind does not need to understand fear as humans do in order to benefit from the effects of fear. Another conspiracy line concerns early warning failures. In multiple Tyranid war zones, local authorities have misidentified lictor activity as cult violence, deserter action, criminal sabotage, predator attacks, or ordinary panic during civil collapse. The Inquisition treats such misclassification as more than administrative incompetence. In some investigations, it is believed that gene-stealer cult influence or compromised planetary officials may have deliberately suppressed reports of unusual predatory activity. This remains unconfirmed in many cases because the confusion of a Tyranid invasion makes evidence difficult to preserve. However, the overlap is strategically plausible. A cult-influenced authority has reason to minimize signs of the coming swarm. A lictor benefits from that delay. The two threats do not need to coordinate consciously for their effects to reinforce each other. Inquisitorial archives also consider the possibility that lictor sightings may be intentionally allowed to spread in limited form. This claim remains speculative. A lictor's main advantage is stealth, and open fear can draw dangerous attention toward its activity. However, some analysts argue that partial exposure can be useful when the resulting panic disrupts defenders more than it endangers the organism. A glimpse on a picked feed, a survivor's testimony, or a mutilated body found in a secured area may force the defender to overcorrect. Units are pulled inward. Commanders restrict movement. Security teams argue with battlefield commanders over manpower. The front line receives fewer reserves. If this pattern occurs, the Lictor has achieved an effect beyond physical assassination. The Inquisition's most severe observation is that the Lictor creates uncertainty about what remains secure. A fortress may still stand, but its internal routes may be known. A command staff may still function, but its fallback plan may have been consumed from a dead officer's memory. A hive city may still resist, but its lower access arteries may have already been mapped through murdered maintenance personnel. This transforms the organism from a battlefield predator into a security crisis. It forces the Inquisition to treat the environment, the command structure, and even surviving witnesses as potential carriers of compromised value. The conclusion of early Inquisition impressions is therefore cold and direct. The Lictor is not only a sign of approaching Tyranid force, it is evidence that the Hive Mind has begun intimate contact with the prey world's knowledge systems. Its body kills, but its greater function is to expose. It reveals where defenders are weak, who holds useful information, how the local chain of command behaves under pressure, and which hidden routes matter most. Confirmed Lictor activity does not always mean that a world is lost. It does mean that the war has entered a more dangerous stage, where the enemy may already understand parts of the defense better than the defenders understand the enemy. Inquisition interrogative findings concerning the Lictor are usually built from damaged testimony. Survivors rarely provide clean descriptions. The organism is normally seen under poor conditions, during failed patrols, collapsing defenses, low light, chemical smoke, heavy rain, battlefield panic, or after long periods of exhaustion. Interrogation transcripts therefore tend to contain contradictions. One witness may describe a tall shape against a wall, another may report only talons, movement above the eye line, or the sound of armoured bodies being dragged into darkness. Others insist that nothing was visible until the victim was already dead. These contradictions do not always weaken the report. In many cases, they support the known profile of a Lictor encounter, because the organism's function is to deny the prey a stable image of the threat. The most common interrogative pattern begins with silence. Survivors report that the first sign was not a roar, a charge, or a visible breach, but the sudden absence of expected sound. A patrol vox line stops transmitting. A sentry fails to answer a routine call. A servo skull returns with damaged optics and no useful feed. A squad moving through a tunnel reports one member missing only after reaching the next checkpoint. The Inquisition treats these absences as important because they show the organism's preference for selective removal. The Lictor does not always create a massacre at first contact. It may remove one individual, relocate, observe the response, and then attack again when the defenders reveal their command habits. Interrogations of guardsmen, naval armsmen, planetary militia, hive security personnel, and civilian labourers often show the same psychological mark. Witnesses struggle to explain how the organism entered spaces that were believed to be secured. Doors remain sealed. Barricades remain intact. Alarm systems record no conventional breach. Yet bodies are found inside the protected area. This is not necessarily evidence of impossible movement. It more often indicates that the defenders misunderstood their own environment. Service shafts, ceiling voids, drainage channels, broken ventilation ducts, collapsed hab levels, cargo lifts, maintenance crawlways, and scaffold structures may all provide routes that ordinary security planning ignores. The Lictor's anomaly is not that it breaks physical law. The anomaly is that it exposes how much of Imperial infrastructure is too large, too old, and too poorly understood by those assigned to defend it. Inquisition interrogators pay particular attention to testimony involving neural consumption. Survivors who discover bodies after a Lictor attack frequently describe wounds consistent with targeted feeding around the skull and nervous tissue. From an Inquisition perspective, these remains are not only forensic evidence, they are indicators of possible information compromise. Interrogators therefore attempt to establish who the dead person was, what knowledge they carried, what routes they knew, what orders they had received, and whether any subsequent Tyranid movement exploited that information. In many cases, certainty is impossible. However, when a later swarm assault follows an obscure access route known only to a small maintenance staff, or when a command fallback point is attacked shortly after one of its assigned officers is killed, the Inquisition records the connection as strategically relevant, even when direct proof cannot be recovered. Some interrogative findings involve survivors who were not attacked despite being close to the organism's path. These accounts are especially valuable. A frightened civilian may report seeing a shape pass within several meters without striking them. A wounded guardsman may survive because the Lictor ignored them and targeted a Vox operator instead. A junior clerk may hide beneath a collapsed desk while the organism kills a senior logistics officer. To ordinary soldiers, this seems irrational or horrifyingly selective. To Inquisition analysts, it confirms that the Lictor's violence is often guided by utility. The organism is not hunting for simple food intake alone. It is selecting knowledge-bearing prey, command-bearing prey, or prey whose removal creates a useful disruption. Documented encounters also show that Lictors can create false assumptions about the size of a Tyranid presence. A single organism moving through multiple levels of a hive structure can generate reports of several separate attackers. Conflicting sightings may lead commanders to believe an entire brood has penetrated the defense zone, forcing them to overcommit troops. In other cases, multiple Lictors may be dismissed as one phantom predator, causing defenders to underestimate the scale of infiltration. The Inquisition treats both errors as dangerous. The Lictor's camouflage, speed, and ability to relocate across vertical and concealed routes makes simple numerical assessment unreliable. A confirmed sighting does not necessarily reveal how many organisms are present. Anomalies in Lictor encounters are usually divided into three categories: environmental, behavioral, and strategic. Environmental anomalies concern the places where the organism appears. Reports place Lictors in jungle canopies, fortress tunnels, void ship access spaces, hive sump levels, manufactorum gantries, trench lines, and ruined cathedra districts. This range is not considered contradictory. It indicates that the organism is not tied to one terrain type. Instead, it favours terrain that offers cover, height, complexity, and prey movement. The more intricate the environment, the more dangerous the Lictor becomes. A clean open field reduces its advantage. A collapsing hive district multiplies it. Behavioral anomalies concern actions that appear too deliberate for a simple predator. Some records describe Lictors bypassing wounded soldiers to attack communication staff. Others describe the organism destroying signal equipment only after killing the operator. Some accounts suggest that Lictors observe evacuation routes before attacking the defenders assigned to control them. These reports remain difficult to prove in full, but they fit the organism's established role as a reconnaissance and assassination bioform. The Inquisition does not need to assume personal intelligence or malice to explain these actions. The Hive Mind's biological design can produce behavior that resembles tactical decision-making, without requiring individual identity. Strategic anomalies are the most troubling. These occur when later Tyranid movements appear to exploit knowledge that should have been hidden. A swarm wave may strike a lightly guarded gate shortly after a local officer with access to gate rotation schedules is killed. Ravenous organisms may emerge through maintenance routes after a sanitation overseer disappears. A command bunker may be bypassed from below after a cartographic servitor team is lost. Such events cannot always be attributed to the Lictor with absolute certainty, because Tyranid invasions involve many forms of sensory detection, infiltration, and battlefield adaptation. Still, Inquisition analysts consider the pattern consistent enough to warrant extreme caution. The Lictor may not be the only source of the swarm's knowledge, but it is one of the most direct. Documented encounters with notable Lictor strains further deepen Inquisition concern. Deathleaper remains the most infamous example of a Lictor-type organism used in a sustained campaign of psychological pressure. Its actions against St. Caspalin's planetary leadership showed that the Lictor pattern could be refined beyond ordinary battlefield reconnaissance and into targeted destabilization of authority. This does not mean every Lictor is a Deathleaper, and the distinction must be maintained. Standard Lictors are already dangerous because of stealth, memory extraction, and assassination capability. Deathleaper demonstrates what happens when those same traits are amplified into a more specialized terror organism. To the Inquisition, this is not merely a unique beast. It is proof that the Hive Mind can intensify a successful biological concept when strategic conditions require it. Other encounters are less famous but more common. A Lictor enters a trench network before dawn and removes the officers responsible for coordinating artillery correction. A Lictor stalks a jungle patrol for hours, kills the guide, and leaves the rest of the squad alive long enough to lose direction. A Lictor penetrates a manufacturing complex and kills the personnel who understand the emergency shut-off system, allowing later Tyranid organisms to enter amid machinery failure and smoke. A Lictor moves through a refugee transit zone and consumes a local official who knows the location of sealed shelters. These examples may vary in detail from warzone to warzone, but the underlying pattern remains stable. The organism targets more than bodies. It targets the information carried by bodies. Inquisition interrogation procedure after a suspected Lictor incident is therefore severe. Survivors are questioned not only about what they saw, but about what the victims knew. Commanders are required to list access privileges, recent orders, route assignments, and sensitive conversations. Local officials may be detained if their delays allowed the organism to continue operating. Witnesses who report repeated sightings may be examined for exposure to gene-stealer cult influence, panic contamination, or deliberate misinformation. This can appear harsh, but the Inquisition operates under the assumption that Tyranid warfare does not end at the visible wound. Every memory taken, every route exposed, and every delayed report may contribute to the next wave of consumption. The conclusion of Inquisition interrogative findings is that the Lictor should be treated as both organism and incident. The creature itself can be hunted, trapped, burned, or destroyed by disciplined force. The incident it creates is harder to contain. A dead officer remains dead. A consumed memory cannot be recovered. A revealed route cannot be made secret again without major alteration. A frightened command staff cannot instantly regain confidence. The Lictor's documented encounters show that its greatest anomaly is not supernatural stealth or impossible intelligence. Its greatest anomaly is efficiency. It turns small breaches into strategic openings, isolated deaths into information loss, and witness confusion into delayed response. For the Inquisition, that is enough to place every confirmed Lictor sighting among the highest priority indicators of a Tyranid invasion already operating inside the defensive mind of the prey world. Classified Inquisition files concerning the Lictor are usually sealed not because the organism's existence is unknown, but because the implications of confirmed contact can cause more damage than the visible attack. A population can be told that Tyranids are approaching. A regiment can be ordered to expect bioforms in the field. A fortress command can be warned about infiltration. What cannot be easily explained without spreading disorder is that the enemy may already possess portions of local memory, command procedure, access knowledge, and defensive habit. The Lictor creates a category of breach that is difficult to measure. It does not steal documents in the ordinary sense. It steals the living experience of those it consumes. For this reason, classified files often focus on containment after discovery, rather than the death toll itself. A report of a single officer killed by a Lictor may be less important than the officer's clearance level, last orders, route knowledge, and proximity to strategic plans. If the victim knew the location of reserve ammunition, the timing of evacuation convoys, or the code sequence for a sealed bunker, the Inquisition may treat all associated systems as compromised. If the victim was a low-ranking maintenance worker with knowledge of sump tunnels below a hive district, that knowledge may still be considered operationally dangerous. In a Lictor incident, rank does not define value, information does. Classified files therefore tend to record the event in layers. The first layer concerns the visible attack, where the body was found, what wounds were present, whether skull or nervous tissue was consumed, and whether other personnel were killed or ignored. The second layer concerns the victim's knowledge, assigned duties, recent movements, conversations, map access, command exposure, and technical familiarity with the area. The third layer concerns later enemy action, whether Tyranid organisms exploited a route, target, or weakness that the victim could have known. The fourth layer concerns human response, whether local commanders delayed reporting, whether witnesses contradicted one another, whether panic spread, and whether any authority attempted to suppress the evidence. The files most likely to remain restricted are those that suggest the Lictor achieved its purpose before being killed. A successful defense against the organism can still be considered a failed containment if the creature fed first. This is a difficult conclusion for local commanders to accept, because military culture often measures success by whether the enemy body lies dead at the end of the engagement. The Inquisition uses a different measure. If the Lictor crossed the perimeter, selected a valuable target, consumed useful neural material, and survived long enough to transmit, mark, or otherwise contribute that advantage to the swarm's advance, then the defensive victory is partial at best. The corpse of the organism does not undo the knowledge already taken. Some classified conclusions remain speculative and are marked accordingly. It is believed by some Ordo Xenos cells that Lictor attacks may help the Hive Mind refine later organism deployment on a local scale. Under this interpretation, the Lictor does not merely discover a route or identify a commander. It contributes to a broader biological assessment of the prey world, terrain density, response timing, sensory vulnerabilities, command rigidity, and the willingness of defenders to abandon certain populations or districts. This remains unconfirmed as a precise mechanism, but the observed results are consistent with the theory. Tyranid assaults following Lictor activity often appear better directed than blind mass attack would suggest. Some speculate that Lictors may also function as tests of institutional resilience. This idea is not proven, and it should not be treated as established Tyranid doctrine. However, the Inquisition preserves such theories because they may explain repeated patterns across different war zones. A Lictor attack on a command bunker may reveal how quickly leadership relocates. An attack on a refugee route may reveal whether defenders prioritize civilians or military assets. An attack on a sensor station may reveal how dependent the local defense is on machine detection. The organism's primary purpose remains reconnaissance and assassination, but those acts can produce secondary data about how a society behaves under pressure. Classified material also addresses the danger of false reassurance. Local authorities sometimes assume that if a Lictor has been killed, the infiltration phase has ended. Inquisition files repeatedly warn against this assumption. One Lictor may indicate the presence of others. One confirmed kill may represent only the organism careless enough, exposed enough, or sacrificed enough to be discovered. The Hive Mind does not treat individuals as irreplaceable. A visible Lictor may even draw defensive resources away from a second organism operating elsewhere. This remains case-dependent, but it is common enough that Inquisition doctrine favours continued lockdown after confirmed termination. Another restricted concern involves the overlap between Lictor activity and gene-steal occult concealment. This overlap must be described carefully. A Lictor is not a cult agent, and a gene-steal occult does not need a Lictor to undermine a world. Their methods are different. However, where both threats are present, their effects may reinforce each other. A cult-compromised official may delay reports of strange killings. A Lictor may benefit from the confusion created by cult sabotage. Civilian fear caused by Lictor sightings may make it harder to distinguish honest panic from cult manipulation. Some classified reports suggest that delayed recognition of Lictor activity should trigger investigation into local governance, security command, and emergency reporting chains. This does not prove cult involvement, but it makes complacency unacceptable. The most severe classified recommendations concern information triage. After a confirmed Lictor attack, the Inquisition may order the relocation of command posts, alteration of patrol routes, sealing of known access passages, rotation of code systems, destruction of outdated maps, and compartmentalization of remaining personnel. Surviving witnesses may be isolated until interrogators determine what they saw, what they knew, and whether their testimony has been influenced by fear, misinformation, or enemy contact. These measures are harsh, but they follow the logic of the threat. The Lictor does not only breach walls, it breaches assumptions. Once a route, schedule, or command habit is exposed, it must be treated as enemy knowledge. The conclusion drawn across Inquisition classified files is that the Lictor is one of the most dangerous Tyranid organisms precisely because it is not the most visible one. It does not darken the sky like a hive fleet. It does not crush fortifications like a massive assault beast. It does not drown a battlefield in bodies by itself. It arrives before those things become unavoidable, when the defenders still believe the war can be understood through reports, maps, orders, and controlled lines of contact. The Lictor enters that system quietly, and proves that the enemy is already learning from within it. Its physical profile explains only part of the danger. The talons kill, the camouflage conceals, the limbs carry it through broken terrain, the feeding tendrils extract knowledge, but the full threat lies in the union of those traits under the direction of the Hive Mind. The Lictor is not an isolated predator. It is a living reconnaissance instrument attached to a planetary extinction process. Every victim may become a map. Every patrol route may become an opening. Every secure room may become a temporary illusion. Every delay in recognition may give the swarm a clearer path. From the Inquisition perspective, the final assessment is severe but rational. Confirmed Lictor activity does not automatically mean a world is lost, but it does mean the war has already moved into an advanced phase of internal compromise. The appropriate response is not simple bravery, and it is not blind pursuit through dark corridors. The appropriate response is containment, information control, terrain denial, command dispersal, and immediate assumption that any knowledge held by consumed victims may now serve the swarm. The Lictor stands as one of the clearest examples of Tyranid warfare at its most efficient. It is a scout that murders, an assassin that studies, and a biological intelligence system that turns prey memory into invasion advantage. Across this Inquisition record, the same conclusion repeats in different forms. The Lictor is not merely the thing seen at the edge of a failing pick feed. It is the evidence that the Hive Mind has begun to understand the battlefield from the inside. By the time its shape is confirmed, the more important question is often no longer where it came from, but what it has already learned.